Hi, everyone. It's Jonathan Corrie. It's Friday afternoon in London, and welcome along to an inaugural event here, virtual content courtesy of the Services Delivery Alliance, with me in my what my wife calls my Magnum PI shirt. Well, actually, I'm delighted to be joined by Katie. You kind of got some like jungle vibes going on there as well with the shirt, so we've clearly
Yeah, we didn't really coordinate, but fun shirts. It's Fun Shirt Friday, so yeah.
awesome. Well, listen, thank you ever so much for taking the time. Give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself, what you do, where you work, any fun facts, whatever you want.
Sure. So my name is Katie Bonilla. I work for a company called Docebo. We are a learning management system and we focus on the learner. I am a fangirl of Docebo, so I've been here 5 years and I was a customer for 2 years prior to that. My background is actually not in leading professional service organizations. So at Docebo, I am the vice president of professional services. But prior to that, I was in training and development and global LMS administration, doing implementations. I work primarily in healthcare and life sciences. I just think learning is like really cool and was never very into technology. If you told 10-year-old me that I'd be working with computers, I would have laughed at you. But I really realized that the intersectionality of technology and learning was the way to reach the world, and I just became fascinated by it. So I've got a long history of training back to high school and early in my career, and then eventually ended up in the LMS world, and that's what got me here. So
Awesome. That might be why we get on a little bit. I don't know if I told you this, but I used to run the commercial element of the training business at CB, which was all leadership development programs and then commercial excellence training. So that was what I was doing for probably 5 years before having this stupid idea of set up a startup. Which ironically, I never knew anything about technology
yeah.
either. And my on the first day of Precursive, I was watching our founder, so shout out to Jimmy, do a demo, and I took the headphone out to my wife and Kate, and I said, this is really good. And she's like, you haven't seen it? I was like, no. She's like, I'm gonna kill you. Anyway, that's really I love the background. So this is going to be a session where we get into a little bit around how you've navigated scaling services in your current business. Background to this for everyone else is Katie and I were having a conversation on the telephone, and I sort of put the question of like, knowing what you know now, like how would you hire differently? What roles would you bring in? Which roles would you bring in? And we were also talking about how services functions sometimes struggle to get the roles that they want, and actually thinking about how you can be a little bit more in control of that, which is something that we'll go through as we talk about the org design as we go through this. So guys, we're going to be using some slides here to just help facilitate the conversation. And we're going to be going through the different sort of maturity levels of services at Docebo. So let's get into it. We're going to be using some slides. So also bear with us, this is the first time we're doing this, so hopefully we don't fuck it up, but there we go. Right. Scaling services, strategy, structure, and execution. So let's kick off and talk a little bit about so when we go back, so going back, how far back would this be when you feel like you're at this level? Is this a couple of years ago then?
Yeah, I think this was probably 2.5 years ago that we were kind of sitting at this stage.
Okay, cool. So for folks listening in here or watching, so we have created a PS maturity model, actually a Precursive inspired by some of the members in the Services Delivery Alliance, and there's various levels to it. Level 2 is a level that we, Katie and I were going through, and we've called that define. And so these were some of the aspirations at that level. So Katie, take us through what was going on then.
Yeah, so as we were coming into kind of where we set these goals, this is us kind of coming in and saying we want to get to this place, right? So we were at level 1. How do we get to level 2? And the first thing we wanted to do was expand. We are a product organization, as I mentioned. We offer LMS technology, and so our professional services team primarily offers onboarding, and that was our meat and potatoes. That was the most of what we did. So we really wanted to expand and offer more services and kind of get away from all we do is onboarding. So that was one of the things we wanted to be able to do, and also expand into the market as our product became more popular. So how can we grow as a services team, but then also as Docebo grows, how can we grow with them? Docebo was growing very, very fast. Like I'm used to fast-paced world. I used to be a bar and restaurant manager, and I would open new restaurants. Like fast-paced is fun for me. Docebo is a whole nother level. I tell people it is insanity, and if you don't like that kind of thing, you will not survive here. So we knew that we had to be able to move very, very quickly in any direction. And so again, with expansion, like it had to be something that even if we couldn't predict it, we had to be able to do it, right? And expand in whatever way the world demanded us. And then we did want to start focusing on building a PMO. We were starting to get into the enterprise and strategic business world, where primarily before our business was in SMB. And so we knew that that was something that was going to become really important and critical for not only our customers, but even internally, as some of these, bigger projects and initiatives came to be, we would need that support internally. Utilization, again, was another thing we needed to start focusing on. We weren't primarily looking at how our team was spending their time. It was more, again, about, are you getting to the goal? Not so much like, what else are you doing? There was just not a lot of formalization. Our time tracking was done in spreadsheets. We kind of had it just to make sure the behavior was there, but we weren't really like monitoring the data, didn't do a whole lot with it. Again, not formalized. And so we really wanted tools that would allow us to look into that, to start to track it, to start to hone in on our margins and where we could cut time and measure time to value. So we really wanted to start focusing on that more, and create billable time targets for our team. So that was something that, again, like as we were maturing, we knew utilization had to be a component of that. And then standardization, we had standardization to a degree for onboarding, but we only had 2 package levels, right? So as we were expanding, we needed to create a way to create a standardization engine so that as new things were coming, once we realized they were of value and we kind of figured out how we wanted to do it, we could kind of turn them into something real and standardize it and make it repeatable very quickly. And that required us to have very clear responsibilities for our team, where before everybody kind of wore every hat, right? We were still in that kind of very startup world. And so we needed division of responsibility, clarity across the team. We wanted to focus on standardization. So we did actually start to look at, okay, we've packaged things, our onboarding is set, but are people actually delivering it the same way? Is it a consistent experience for our customers? And do our team, are they using the same resources? Are they utilizing the same templates? Because again, we've continued to iterate over time. Are people, doing it the standardized way? And then that engine that I mentioned, just making sure as we develop things and decided we are going to bring something to market as an actual package, do we have an engine to do that?
Awesome. Okay. So I guess a few comments and questions here, because also I don't want to have like to wear you out talking for 45 minutes straight. So a few comments. I think one of the things that I hear a lot is what you've highlighted, which is as you move up market, whether you're moving from SMB to mid-market or in particular into enterprise, the importance of project management. It really crystallizes, and therefore having that function, having people in that role, having professional project management, whatever shape or form that comes in and that works for you is really important. Were you hiring a lot of like quote professional project managers, or were you training internally, or a bit of a blend of the two? Help us understand there, because that comes up a lot as like, how do we create this capability type question?
Yeah, I think the way that we are kind of building out our PMO, and that is still growing candidly, is a really good example of our sort of general hiring strategy and how we've grown. So as I talk through this, we've actually taken a similar approach with our other teams. So when we realized we needed project managers, and as we built other teams, we actually will hire at the team member level someone who we see potential in or who has leadership experience. So the first person we're bringing into the team, even if they're not brought in as a leadership role and they're brought in as an individual contributor. So in this case, our first project manager was a senior project manager who we knew was going to be delivering on our first enterprise projects, who
Yeah.
we knew was going to be capable of helping us start to build out, our templates and our programs and what this would look like. We anticipated that this person would eventually step into leadership, right? And we really focus on internal development. And so it allows us to say, hey, you're coming in, you're helping us pioneer. You either have leadership experience or we're going to help you get there, but you're starting as the team member, right? And so that allows us, and you'll see in a minute when we look at the org design, they kind of start reporting to another leader. So there's not a whole set team. We're not building out a whole function to start. We start really small. And then kind of build out from there. And so Kimberly Battles is actually the first North American PM we have, and she is now our manager of service excellence, leading service excellence function and our PM team.
Yeah, yeah. I think reflecting on personal experience in my business and what I've seen is we tried taking consultants, technical consultants, and turning them into project managers, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so getting people with project management experience of varying levels definitely helped. I think one thing that also can trip you up a little bit is it is when you get into enterprise, you will inevitably have much more scrutiny around SLAs and timelines. And there may indeed, in some instances, be penalties associated with like delays or these types of things. And therefore having professional project management where you're documenting what is happening, whether that's flash reports, risk reports, so that you've got what you did documented can really provide a little bit of security and stability. Because with the best will in the world, you can get into some conflicts with customers. Nobody wants to, but it's just a little tip that I've picked up. Learned the hard way. How would you advise others to think about time tracking? Because a lot of services leaders, sometimes they end up in the biggest job they've ever had, right? Which it's fair to say is probably the same for you right now, right? And people are scared shitless about asking, particularly in tech, about asking people to track time. Everyone hates time sheets. So how would you counsel others to think about how you introduce that or getting people to think about time tracking?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw in our Service Delivery Alliance chat yesterday, but I'm like I'm looking for somebody to tell me I don't need my solution architects to track time because I know I'm gonna have to make them do it. But I'm looking for
I've got some ideas.
Yeah. Time tracking is just such a double-edged sword. Nobody likes to do it. It is time consuming in itself. It's so arduous. It's a pain in the butt. And I'll be honest, it's a conversation at the leadership level that we constantly have of like, what are the appropriate amount of buckets and how granular do you get? And like, you always want to know all these things. We started actually with a lot of different levels and saying, we're going to look at this and we want to know how much time on each project they spent on each phase and each milestone. And our poor delivery people had, 32 tasks within every project. And so they open up their time tracking and it's a nightmare to try and find where they're supposed to put their time. And then we found like we don't even use the data, right? We're not looking at, oh, okay, we look at this particular phase, how much time are they spending there? So I think a couple of things that we learned is ultimately figure out the data that really is critical and then kind of work backwards from there to kind of figure out how you need to structure how your team's going to track time. Whether or not they should, yes, the answer is yes, they should track their time. Always yes. But I think that's something that you really need to look at and be very strategic and intentional about is like, where do you want them to put that? What are those classifications going to be? And make it as simple for your people as possible, but also make sure that you're getting the right data, because if you're going to have them do this thing, you're going to be driving it. It is a constant battle. Make sure that you're getting out of it what you need, right? So those are two things, do it and do it right. I think the third thing is that you have to, consistently drive this. So when we started with time tracking, we really teased it a lot. Hey, we're getting this new tool. We're going to start time tracking. Here's what we're going to do with it. So before they even had to do it. This is why it's so important. I'm going to be talking to our president, and this is the data that I'm going to use to tell him XYZ about our team. So if you all don't do this, I can't tell him these important things about how awesome you are. Or we won't be able to price our packages accordingly, and you're going to end up being, tight on projects, and we're going to ask you to deliver in a time frame that you can't because you told me it only took 6 hours when it really takes 10, right? So again, it's buy-in, which is such a basic principle, but really spending the time before you ask people to do it or to change how they do it to make sure they understand why. And getting their input. I always involve my team, and I've got I call them the parrots, right? Like they're always going to chirp if something's wrong. They're the first one, and so I'll bring them in and ask them to poke holes in everything. And so when we have a new idea, I say, what gives you heartburn? What do you hate? So I can get in front of some of those issues. They usually have really good insights to help us make sure we're doing things better the first time, or at least allow me to address questions if we can't get around some of the stuff that they're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's tough. I mean, time tracking just sucks in general. I think I do time tracking. I think that's another thing, is that all of our leadership also do it so that our team sees that we're all in this together. And I look at how long my leaders have to spend on, sales support. So we're looking at data across all of our team.
So I think that the takeaway there is it's not just about looking backwards, it's about using that information to plan the go forward, to manage capacity, and it's sort of reframing that narrative. That's great. Let's look then at the org design. So talk us through this.
Sure. So if we look here on the right, that is where we have, well, I'll start at the top actually. So we have VP of Professional Services. Yes. So, and at the time, we had the project management team was reporting directly to the VP. So like I said, we didn't actually have this as a separate team with their own leader. So this was a small group of individual contributors who reported directly to the VP. I believe at the time it was about 4 or 5 globally. And then we also had a senior director of value-added services. And so this gentleman was leading 7 of our sort of more senior consultants. And so we kind of pulled from everybody on the team that had really specialized skills. So we had like one front-end designer, just one guy that just had this skill that nobody else on the team had, people that were, again, very, very senior, very innovative, and people that did just raise their hand and say, I want to help build out the new stuff. And so we kind of collected them and put them on this value-added services team with the goal of saying, we're trying to expand. We want to look at things that we're kind of currently doing ad hoc that customers ask us to do, and we'll do if they request it. And let's determine, should we turn that into a standardized service, right? Should we package it up? Is it worth that? Also, please go out and do market research and find out, what should we be doing? Right now, we do onboarding, fine. Yep. What are we leaving on the table? What would our customers like? What are other PS teams doing? What are other vendors doing? Stop looking at LMSs, look at other software types, right? Look at PSA vendors, what do they offer? And let's get creative and make sure that Docebo's PS team are doing more for their customers than anybody else. So this team was really tasked with being very innovative and looking at what we could bring to the table. And like I said, creating that engine. And so they kind of started out with a lot of foundational stuff, like creating documentation, overhauling knowledge management, looking at how we do market research. So, they kind of had to build everything to start. Yeah. And figure out even internal processes. Like it took them several months just to go and say, all right, to create this engine, what are all the teams that have to be touched internally if we want to launch a service? Documenting that. What are the processes for each, right? What does it look like to send something through legal, through marketing? Who's in charge of that? Docebo moves quickly. Those names kept changing every 3 months. So it was a huge task to do that. And simultaneously, as they were putting that together, they were testing and pioneering services. So it was really interesting. And that lasted about 1.5 years while kind of all that was going on. But that was a brand new function as we kind of stepped into this level 2 phase.
Okay, cool.
Project managers, again, was about 3, and they were just kind of starting to get into those bigger projects. Enterprise and strategic was still relatively new for us. And so I wouldn't say rare, but we didn't have a lot of those customer projects just yet. So they
just for clarity then, sorry. So previously for projects, your functional and technical consultants would just do the onboarding
lead
on all of
everything.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. And so they were also kind of doing a similar thing to the value-added services team of expanding our project templates, right? Building out better lists, working on tooling, again, just creating better kickoff decks and getting everything kind of organized there. And then, like I said, because onboarding was really what we did, and the biggest distinction we had was regions, we essentially had two teams. We had North America and EMEA. And within that, we had managers and then individual contributors.
Yeah.
Then on the individual contributor level, we have functional and technical. So our functional consultants are called solution deployment managers. They're sort of front and center, and they lead pretty much all of our projects. And then our technical consultants will supplement. So when there's a technical component, they kind of come in and like pinch hit for like single sign-on, for APIs. And there's a few modules and apps that we have, like Salesforce. You can kind of lay that over our product. That's very technical. So they would come in for that, right?
And so what would be the effort split between the two? 70, 80% functional, 20% technical?
Yeah, pretty much 80-20, just about.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So this was kind of the direction we took, and within this, and this was good. This was a decent direction. There were some learnings from this, which I can talk about now, or if you want to wait on that, but definitely some learnings after we spent a year and a half in this space.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, I think the elegance of org design and how you underappreciate org design and getting the right people in the right roles. I think comment wise, I think some would be surprised that you had a director and a manager. Many would just have a single management layer there. That's likely due to the volume and the growth that you guys have been experiencing. I think nomenclature is actually pretty important. So like the lean, because you've called these like job roles something, right? So you, Katie, have decided, okay, it's going to be value added services, which is great because it, from a mindset standpoint, it's like, how are we adding value, right? Like most, I think that's important. The split between the functional and technical is interesting. I think that's something that companies should think about more, because a lot of people get very bogged down in the project and the package and, like you say, the tasks, and particularly when you put in a PSA tool, you're looking at the templates and you're refining them, and you've actually got to take a step back and think about what's the volume, what level of effort is going at a high level through these people, and therefore how do we optimize that? Good example, was talking to a client recently, and in our world, it's sort of we have a PM and a solution architect, and more of the weight is with the solution architect than with the PM. But what we used to have was the PM doing a similar amount of work and shadowing all of the conversations and being on all of them. And then we killed that, and we have them in at the front, and then they hand over, and it's like baton passing. And the customer was quite surprised by this. They were like, we weren't quite sure who was in charge of the project. And we were like, that's deliberate, because we don't want our PM on every single interaction, because that's just chewing up a load of their time when this SA can take it. And they were like, that's really interesting. Well, we're actually going to try that internally, because our PMs are sat idle in a lot of this stuff. And if you, so I think understanding that effort, and therefore, how do people interact and things like that. Would you, looking back, is there anything you would have done differently in org design at all? Is there another role that you might have added?
Yeah, I think I don't know if there's another role. I think the value-added services, honestly, again, looking back on it, I think we probably didn't need to kind of separate that as a function, and we probably could have created like almost like a program out of this instead of a whole team, right? And like more of like an initiative of let's kind of focus people around this instead of making a team around it, because ultimately that's kind of now what we're doing. I also think we should have focused on PMO at this point, right? So maybe instead of a director of value-added services, really created director of our PMO and started focusing on building that out.
Yeah.
But we weren't seeing so much growth in enterprise yet. It was like trickling in. So we were
Yeah.
just kind of like waiting. And that's the game you have to play of like the demand, and you can't see
Yeah.
into the future and hoping you make the right decisions. So I'd probably flip-flop those two, honestly.
Cool. All right, let's look at then at the services mix. So what we're talking about here for everyone is the types of services that are being provided to Docebo's customers, that are being sold to Docebo's customers. So we've got effectively here the mix, if you will. So 85% onboarding services, 15% other and ad hoc, and then we're introducing this value-added services. So just quickly explain here, because it's pretty self-explanatory, but onboarding services, tell us a little bit about that. Is packages that are being onboarding packages being sold for net new implementations, one would assume.
Exactly. Or you're an existing customer and you purchase a new feature module product, and we're onboarding you to that feature
Got
module
it.
product.
Okay, great. Part of the reason, guys, why I'm doing some of the talking is, again, so that Katie doesn't have to talk solid for an hour, which is a bit of a pain. Okay, cool. And then ad hoc services, tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so obviously we're a service team. We want to make sure our customers have what they need. So our philosophy is like, you tell us what you need. If we can do it, we'll do it. So just because we don't have it on a portfolio somewhere, a package that you can pick, if the customer asks for it and we can do it, we will. So a few examples of this were like custom reporting. We have the ability to run SQL reports against our database. And so every once in a while, there'd be a need that couldn't be met in the UI or through APIs. So we build that. Sometimes people would want like customized training programs, just things that like random requests that would come up that we would meet. And as we started to see trends, that's where we started to say we might need to build out value-added services to start formalizing some of these asks that are coming up more frequently.
Okay, cool. Now, again, same question. If you were to go back, is there a type of service that you would have introduced here earlier than you did?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we didn't, from a strategic lens perspective, like the goal was right, and let's expand our services, let's make things that our customers need. We were still really focused on our product. And I think what we really should have focused on was that value prop, like truly what's going to give our customers the most value. And so a lot of the services we ended up creating, again, it's like, oh, they need data. Let's make a report service. Oh, they need to understand this feature better. Let's make a service about that feature. And we missed the mark, in my opinion. Now that's what we're working on now is, all right, let's make some more strategic and consultative services about not just here's the product and we'll teach you how to use it, but like, why is it failing? Why are you not getting adoption? How can you use it better? How do you market it? Let's come in and do customized training. So some of the things that are less product configuration enablement related and more how to take advantage and get value out of our product.
Yeah. That's that. Bingo. Okay, great. That's what we're finding as well, right? We've got a lot of clients in our world who maybe are new to role, or frankly speaking, they're not always the hero of their business. They're not the sales guys, they're not the marketing organization, they're the services people. What do those guys really do? It's like, well, they do something pretty darn important, actually. So it's they're sort of having to navigate that world. But I think that applies across many industries, right? I think you can find people who are, if you sell to auditors, or you sell to InfoSec, or you sell to IT, or you sell to HR, you've always got stakeholder groups where they're like navigating, this is one, you think your product's so important, but it's frankly a little app that they use for whatever they do in their daily job, right? So no, I hear you on that one. Cool. Let's crack on. So just to finish with on this level. So in terms of like services execution, we've sort of broken this down into 4 areas. We've got quality. We've already talked about the focus on utilization. We've talked about standardization and innovation. And so, people, process, and systems, I would imagine, really have to come together to kind of achieve these 4 things. So tell us a little bit about, in these areas, what were some of the key learnings that we haven't already covered?
Yeah. So again, like maturity was a big theme as we kind of moved into this stage. And so again, we're kind of moving from spreadsheets to a PSA tool, moving from like disparate data to very intentional and aggregate and analyzed data. So from a quality perspective, it was a lot easier for us to see into customer projects and themes. We could very easily see trends and like, oh my gosh, like there's a very clear issue with a certain region or a certain segment or a certain project type, where before it was really only through one-on-ones and stuff like that that we would find like, oh, there's an issue. And then if we talk to each other as a team, then we'd be like, oh, we're hearing a theme, right? And so we weren't seeing a lot of those things. And the PSA tool really helped us figure out very easily and very quickly, there's a theme, we have to fix it. And it was pretty easy to do that because of all the data we were able to get. So keeping a pulse on and monitoring quality was a win and a big focal point during this stage. Standardization, again, like with the tooling, with the focus of the project management team coming in and creating templates, being able to build those out. Again, PSA tool allows you to do that very quickly, very easily. And you can iterate much quicker and kind of roll things out. That's something that's really, again, important to us as we're moving so fast. We have to be able to make changes and react to feedback from our team, from our customers, and move forward. And so being able to standardize what we know is working and roll that out very quickly is something the PSA tool helped us with a lot.
There's a lot of process though, right? I think some people think that the PSA tool is going to do all the work, and it's not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it. Kind of it was put to me yesterday. They said, "Oh, my PSA tool tells me where the car crashes are, but we're not quite there yet in terms of avoiding, the obstacle, as it were, to avoid the crash, at all." So just though help people think about, like, when you think about, you've got the data point and then looking the importance of process and understanding that it's not just tool, it's process. Talk to us a little bit about how you think about that.
I'm like weirdly thinking about baking a cake right now. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
okay.
My mom, I told her one time we were just talking about dieting and prayer and all that. We had this very weird conversation. I was like, look, a lot of people will ask God to give them a cake, and God will give you ingredients in an oven. And that's how I see like a PSA tool, right? Like you have the tools available to you, but you have to create a good project template and put it inside of your tool. And you have to set the oven correctly, and you know what I mean? And then you have to watch it and you have to take it out at the right time. You can't just say, oh, I have all the things, it's there, it's gonna be great, and I'm gonna have a cake. So that's a very goofy analogy, but a PSA tool is like any piece of technology. You have to understand how to use it. You have to put good things into it. You have to continue to iterate. You have to monitor it. And it's going to give you insights, but it doesn't do your job for you, right? You have to take those insights and action those insights. And so, yes, we put project templates together that were monumentally better than what we were able to do. And we literally had a PDF for a while that was a checklist for people. Like that's what we had. Then we got to like a spreadsheet. Then we had a different tool that was a little better, but this allowed us to actually have like deliverables and prerequisites and links and all of those things, and actually monitor a project in the way we wanted to. Look at budget, look at all of these things, so that we could actually monitor it again from a quality perspective.
It forces you to look at it. That's kind of what I think. And even like we use our product internally. We use a PSA tool internally, and one of the unintended consequences that I noticed recently, I was talking to a project manager, and he's like, they're certain individuals are too much on the task of the project plan, and we've got to free people up people's thinking, because if that thing's delayed, like we need to coach people on going and looking for the other thing, right? And not being tied into a solution. I think it's just like how these tools encourage behaviors is really important to think about. So as we move on then into level 3, repeatable. I don't know who comes up with these names, but it was me. Okay, so let's pause for a moment. So just to recap, in the previous maturity, we're talking how many people approximately? Maybe 20 to 30 people?
I think globally like less than 30.
Okay, and then what we're saying is here, I mean, how many people are you now? 80, 90?
84.
Okay. And you feel like you're kind of here now, right? Let's just set the scene. Okay, cool. So this is where we are now, and this is what you're looking to achieve with your team. So we've got scalability, focus development, and being more agile. So let's go through these. So talk us through the scalable.
Yeah. So the last thing we were talking about was expanding. We were like, we know we're going to expand now. One of the things that we learned as we were expanding, we realized that we have to be scalable, and the two things are different, right? Like you can expand a team and be able to do more, but doing that in a scalable fashion is a whole different world. And we learned a lot about that in our previous phase. And so really focusing. And that's why I kind of said, like, in hindsight, the PMO would have been a better investment for us, and like operations would have been a better investment for us, because we weren't scalable. Like a lot of the stuff we're like, man, like we did not think this through. And so focusing on, as a product comes to us, right, as Docebo releases a new feature, product, module, how are we going to react to that quickly and have an engine for that? Not just an engine for our services, but how do we scale services quickly to products? New segments, again, because we started getting a flush of enterprise and different segments, and our services, which we were starting to master, but not quite. And then also geographically, which is a challenge we're still running into with like language barriers, right? How do we effectively grow teams quickly and with quality when these demands come up?
Cool.
So again, it's another level of maturity, right? Just kind of taking it to the next level. Development becomes an issue, and kind of I talked about sort of that methodology that we have of kind of hiring people that we intend to grow, and we do that. We are incredibly intentional about hiring. We work very closely with our talent acquisition team. I feel bad for people that interview with us because we really put them through the ringer. They have like 7 interviews, and we try to make it fun, but like, you got to be cool to work with us. You got to be change ready. You got to be smart. Like, you got to be a unicorn person to work at Docebo. So we have to really sift to find people that we know are going to enjoy working here and actually do well. But once we get them, they want opportunity, right? You find unicorns, you got to give unicorns glitter. And so we have to find ways to give them growth opportunities, right? So, okay, we're growing quickly. You'd think that would be easy, but there's still only so many opportunities, even with the growth, right? And so we had some of the people that had been here and had been putting in the work and really been helping us. And when opportunities came up, they felt like, I feel like I should have had that. So they were leaving, or we weren't having opportunities in certain areas. And so we were trying to really figure out, how do we create more opportunities for our people? And that was something we wanted to really focus on at this stage. But with that, skills development, making it very clear. So we do skills development, but it was all very organic. It was still like, hey, we're going to ask you to pioneer something, right? Hey, you're going to help us build this thing. Through that, you're going to learn, because you're going to be pioneering. You're going to go do market research. You've never done that before. You're going to learn how to do market research. So you're developing, but there was no roadmap for them. There was no like, hey, do these things and that'll help you get to the next stage, or check these boxes and you'll get a title or promotion or whatever. So we really wanted to make sure there was career pathing available, so that it wasn't just them kind of taking on things we asked them to do without it actually leading to any kind of end goal for them, or kind of painting any picture of development truly. And then we also really wanted to focus on specialized services. And what I mean by that is, we needed to actually focus on people. I kind of mentioned a front-end designer earlier. We needed to start looking at our team and say, who is able to do something really cool that like we don't really tap into that? Like, raise your hand if you know how to use Articulate. And like, we don't do content design, but like, who could, right? And so we started to focus on like, what types of expertise do we have here that we might be able to tap into, and how do we start to leverage that? And then agility was, again, something really important for us at this stage, and that we're focused on being very efficient. With a bigger team and with the growth being so quick, we went from 30 to 80 in about 6 months. It was a very quick growth for us. We hired like 42 people, I think, in 2021.
More than double, isn't it? So it's
yeah, it was intense. And so again, like being very efficient, just the size of the team, it was so much easier to like hop on a team call and tell everybody something. And now we're like, we need a communication strategy. we need roles to support these teams. Like our managers can't do everything. How do we scale to these different needs and make sure that we have the templates and everything is in place so that, like, again, the scaling, and then continue to standardize while being efficient. Those are all, that's kind of sounds redundant now that I say it all, but all very important.
Fascinating. I'm gonna zero in on again, let you catch your breath. I'm gonna zero in on the development piece, which I think is hard for some services organizations to figure out. Because if you look at it, right, you've got 3 levels. You've got you, manager, and individual contributors in your previous structure, apart from the one where there's one level in between. But essentially, it's that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like quite one-dimensional in the sense of like, where do I go? I've got a boss, I'm not getting their job, I'm not getting Katie's job, so where do I go? And I think that one of the things that embedded services teams, which is PS teams within technology companies, can learn from consulting companies, which is what some services leaders who come into tech from consultancies do well, is they think about the bandings within a position, right? So if you've got a consultant, you can create a senior consultant, you can create, if you've got a director, you can create senior director, and these types of things. And it's thinking about that, the tiers of seniority, is then thinking about the roles and the descriptions and how you partner with HR or your talent team. And then it's being very, very explicit about what is this job? What is the development plan to get you to the next job? Because for many, it's and you come from a learning background. For many, it's not necessarily the title, it's the self-awareness that I'm learning something and I'm getting better, and I can articulate that I've done something better. One of our team today, I've been working with them and coaching them on challenging customers more, which is not this person's natural disposition as a project manager, because if you don't, you're going to get a little bit run over. And so by challenging them and by framing it the right way, you got what you wanted. But this person has reframed the way that they think about that conflict. And we talked about something called constructive tension, right? It's no one's particularly comfortable, but we get over it and we move on. And it's cathartic. It's basically like a big family row. So every Christmas, right? Let's move on. So notable changes and opportunities at this level, which is going to take us into the org design. So talk us through what you're thinking here.
Yeah, so like when we were thinking about that, and like, okay, we had some really like tenured, veteran, amazing people leave our team because we hadn't had these opportunities for them. So that was very important for us to create, for the people that we wanted to maintain and for others coming in. So we created opportunities for promotions. We looked at our org structure. I spent a ridiculous amount of time. Like, I know a lot about how to design orgs now. So if anybody wants to know, come talk to me. But I looked at all the different methodologies, all the different ways, what works, what doesn't, what you need to think about. And our business kind of wanted us to flatten out a little bit, right? And so, and we talked to our team and we talked to our business. So we opened up new roles, and created new positions. And I can talk a little bit about how we did that. We actually, like, I don't want to say like made up positions, but sort of, we actually created team leads, which are not a formal management role, but it's a way to test out management, right? So it's not like you actually have direct reports, but you're kind of being mentored by a manager. And then we did make some staffing adjustments. So we did eliminate the value-added services team and move things around, so we can look at that in a minute, but we pretty shift.
All right, here we go. So this is what it looks like currently, yes?
Yes.
Within reason. Okay, great.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we take what we saw last time, we can see what you've done is you've divided up functional services and technical services. That's the first thing that strikes me.
Yes.
You've created this new solution architecture team, and then you folded the project managers under this service excellence manager as well. And you've got that lead role, which is what you've just referred to. And again, so back to you. So kind of let's maybe come at this a different way, right? Like, what is what was the decision around dividing functional and technical? Let's begin there.
Yeah, so we really, like I said, when I kind of looked at what is going to make the best structure, one of the things that I wanted to do was stop shifting everybody around. Like people who have worked in our team for a while, some of them have had up to 8 different managers over the course of 5 years, which is nuts, right? Like we all know why that's not great. And it is what it is, but I was pretty adamant that we try and get a structure that would last for a while. I mean, there'll probably be some more changes eventually, but let's try and create a static org chart. And so I actually did a lot of research. I talked to my team and I talked to the business because I kind of really wanted to understand what makes the most sense for how you would need to get to these team members. We had approached it before of what are they going to deliver and then how would their reporting structure, right? So they're going to deliver onboarding, so they need to roll up to someone who owns onboarding. That's how we thought of it. And when we talked to internally, people were saying, no, if I need to reach out about a team member, it's because I need to talk to their manager about performance or resource allocation or a project that they're on, right? It's not about that they do onboarding. So that was one thing, is that, you know, people were having a hard time figuring out who their manager was just by looking in our org chart, because the org chart wasn't clear because it just said onboarding, but then the titles didn't match, right? You got a technical person on the onboarding team, you got a technical person on the value-added services team. Nobody internally could figure out where anybody sat just from that. Secondly, our teams were saying, I love my manager, but they're teaching me how to do onboarding. I want to develop my technical skills, or I want to develop my functional consulting skills. And so we wanted to make sure that the leaders were leading people against their skills. And so aligning that a little bit more closely. And then thirdly, it was the division of how our services go. When we started to expand and move away from onboarding being 80-something% of what we do, and now we've got a bigger portfolio, the bigger distinction between what we do was it's either functional or technical. And so that made a lot more sense for the division from a skills perspective, from a leadership perspective, and then obviously from division of services.
Love it. Love it. Anything else you want to add to this? Tell us a little bit about service excellence. Like,
yeah,
what's the scope of that role now?
Yeah, so there's
an execution.
So there's a little more to this story actually. And so Kim Battles, who I mentioned earlier, is the manager of service excellence. And so she has our project managers reporting into her, and that's a larger team now. I think we've got 7 of them in North America. If you look closely, that we do have 2 in EMEA that do sit under our functional services director, just because of the regional, it's just a little easier to kind of keep them. So there's dotted lines there in partnership. And then we have 1 service excellence lead that is also reporting into her. We also had 2 other ops roles that were kind of interjected and floated around that you didn't see. One was a data analyst and one was a resource manager. We didn't have bubbles for those, but they were in there at some point. And I was kind of in the process of building out like a little ops team for PS. Like I said, we really needed support. We actually centralized an ops function for our whole customer experience organization. So those 2 roles that I had created now sit on an ops team that services my department, our support team, and our customer success team. So that's like a bigger team now, but I've got some people over there. We kept the service excellence lead over here because she works really closely with her manager, with our team, with the project managers. And what she does is she owns that engine that we created. So she's the sole owner of, if there's a new service, a new product, a new need, she's the one who puts it through that engine and makes sure everything gets spit out. So she either creates everything or delegates the creation, but she makes sure everything gets done. She acts as sort of, in addition to our leadership team, sort of the SME for our department. So if we need somebody to go speak or talk to or represent us in an internal meeting, it doesn't have to necessarily be a leader. She can represent us and speak to our services and meet with other teams. She is helping us with a knowledge management overhaul. She's helping us with new go-to-market for services. She's helping us with rebranding. So like literally anything about operating at a high level and going to market, she really owns all that. It's a pretty big order for one person.
No, it's cool. I'm conscious of the time. Now we can pause if you got another meeting.
I'm
And
okay.
you sure?
Yeah.
Go for a few more minutes. So, very generous with your time. I think a few comments from my side on this, and um, is one is, that getting that one of the things you were teaching me was, I've been trying to develop like a managed service for some of our clients where we've got customers like your size and level and larger, but then we got this sort of there's the gap between the two is a really tough journey to navigate, right? Going from like 30 to 60 to 90, it's a very different world. And so we've been trying to help our clients and develop this services offering where we can provide some of that external PS operations type support via our team. And so we were talking about that. And if you remember, I was saying, how did you like get the sort of the budget for the role? And you were like, well, I took the individual, we just lowered their and this is a great story. So you took the individual, you lowered the utilization target for that individual, put them into the role, saw the benefits of the role, then went to the powers that be and said, this is the role that this person is now in. And that, I think you said you had the buy-in of HR, but I think that's something where I think, others can think about when you need these roles where they're not billable, but they are driving productivity. And you talk about GTM is really important. It's the service GTM, because at this point you're a business within a business, right?
Yeah.
You're 90 people. That's multiple millions of dollars a year, right? In terms of even, salary, right? So you're a business within a business, and therefore there's positions which are going to help that business to thrive. And I think services leaders like you, where you've done it sort of instinctively, you can kind of control your destiny a little bit and sort of, ask for forgiveness rather than permission, which I think was very instructive. The other thing I think, though, that's interesting about this is that, you mentioned the resourcing role is not on here. I do think that there's a ratio for me of about like 1 to 30 of like a resource manager to resources, unless you are confident in folding some of that planning into these management roles.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think it is. So our management team are really heavily handed still in resourcing, and
Yeah.
our RM really helps with like the intake processes, coordination, kind of recommending and saying, here's what we need to resource.
Yeah.
And our people are our special sauce. Like I said, like we know that pairing the right person with the right customer goes a long way. So we don't rely on algorithms yet. Like I'm
Yeah.
hoping to get to a point where we can trust it fully. But our managers still match people to projects, and so they do that jointly with the resource manager. So yeah, it's still a pretty big team effort, and we meet twice a week with the resource manager on anything that he's like, I need input on an assignment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's finish up then with the services mix. This has been brilliant, so thank you so much. So now let's talk a little bit about these revenue streams for services. So we've got functional services, technical services. So again, that's where you've got the functional leads who were, if we go back during the onboarding phase, they were driving the project. The technical leads were technical consultants were coming in for some of that highly technical stuff. And we had that split of effort between the two. We've got that new service excellence function, which is developing more of these scalable modern propositions for services. So again, what would be your commentary here on this scalable structure for your services offerings?
Yeah, I honestly think functional and technical is almost today, and I think I made this a month or two ago. This is getting closer to 50-50 now. Part of that is because of our products. So we've got some more technical products that have been rolling out, and business needs, like more enterprise customers need more technical support. So again, yeah, I think it's really important as you build out your teams, as you look at your go-to-market strategy, as you look at your service design, to look at what your teams are spending their time on and where are they being utilized. Look at that time tracking. Because again, you might think you're doing one thing, but then when you really look at where your people are spending their time, I mean, we were finding that our technical resources were allocated to onboardings, but when we dug into their time tracking, they were spending their time doing all kinds of other things that people were asking of them. And that's where we found out we needed to create those services, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, those scales are definitely kind of evening out a little bit, which is really exciting. And we continue to see opportunities to design new services there. Service excellence, again, is I think going to continue to grow. We'll probably still have one resource there in that position, but as the team grows, we'll probably have some more folks there. And that'll be more of like a center of excellence type of function for our team as we get bigger. One thing I haven't mentioned is we do have a very expansive partner network that service excellence and our PMO team also oversee that's external. And so that's a big part of what they do as well. And then our solution architects, this was an existing team within Docebo, but they sat under the sales org. And so we brought them over because they are pre and post sales support for scoping and vetting technical and functional. So they have really close alignment to my team. So I'm now leading them. And so we're doing a lot of work on skills development, on foundational building to kind of get them a little bit more mature and organized. Super exciting. Some smart folks on that team. So
awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, listen, thank you ever so much. Really, really appreciate the time. Was it helpful reflecting?
Yeah, it really is. Like it's, it's funny how easily it is to repeat mistakes. So I think it's very important to reflect.
I specialize in that. I specialize in repeat mistakes.
Yeah.
My wife would say this shirt is one of those. And yeah, but there we go. No, super helpful. I mean, I think lots of learnings. I think there is like, one is the professionalization of project management and thinking about that and how you scale that.
Yeah.
The management of that is really important. A lot cascades from there. Like if you think about projects, generally you start with the PM, you don't start with the individual consultant. So there's an element that within that PMO role, they can take on some of that resourcing early for a broader group, arguably. I think the guidance on time management, again, here it's making it as easy as possible is a really great learning, right? Is like if you are putting in any sort of tool or any sort of spreadsheet or whatever it is, don't make them track time against 50 things. It's just going to waste everybody's time. To begin with, maybe just start with a project. If there are certain things that you really want to understand, maybe go that level deeper, but just get people used to tracking and then do something with the data, right? This is really important, is like do something with that data that helps their lives get better by saying, hey, we're not going to overload you because we've learned from this data that it actually takes us this amount of time, not this amount of time. I think the standardization engine that you described is really important. You've got to give yourself enough time to figure out how do we industrialize value for our clients, which is really important. I think many services leaders should try and lean on whoever in their organization is good at go-to-market, whether it's in marketing or sales or whatever it might be. You got to lean on those people for some guidance because you're going to be creating a go-to-market. And I also think the way that you structure your team and the nomenclature sends a message to others in your business. That's something that sort of slipped out. It was the external view of your team by others, knowing where they sit and what they do. Very important. I love the idea. There's two other things. One of what cool shit can you do is a great way of thinking about like, how do we create a little bit more diversity in our work? Maybe you don't set their billable utilization at 85%. You do it at 70% to give them room to do some cool shit. And if you're going to find unicorns, you've got to give them glitter.
Amen.
With that, everyone, thank you, Katie. Really appreciate it. For those of you in the Services Delivery Alliance, if you would like to contribute to the community with something like this, we'll be more than welcome to do so. There's more coming out, but Katie, thank you ever so much and have a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.